World Children's Day, 27th of May, is UNICEF's annual day of action for children by children. The Nigeria's theme for the year is strengthening supportive systems for the protection of the Nigerian child, a wake-up call. What are the issues that matter to children, and how are the adults creating a better future for them? We have in the studio three women that will be giving us perspectives on this. Amina Abubakar, the coordinator, FlexiServe Foundation. She also joins us in the studio. And then we have Hajia Zainab Khalil, the national coordinator, Young Ambassadors Against Drug Initiative. And we also have Mariam Augi Abdulmumani, executive director, founder, Ilmi Children's Foundation. Thank you all for joining us on Daybreak this morning.
Thank you for having us.
All right. Well, let's begin by talking about the significance of this day. If I may begin with Hajia Zainab. How important is this day?
Okay, this day is a day set aside to raise awareness about issues that affects Nigerian children, not just Nigerian children, children all over the world. It's a global celebration to appreciate children for who they are, to show them that the country cares about them. You know, during our days, I remember it's a day that, aside from the holidays, you look forward to seeing your governors, because it's a very special day. It's a day that you show love, show care to every child, which means that every child in Nigeria is important, and this day is set aside for every child. But when you look at it, the day being set aside is only those in school that remember that there's a day set aside to celebrate children. But the child that is out there who is vulnerable, who is on the street, does not even know that there's a day set aside to celebrate children in Nigeria.
Okay, now let me direct this at Amina. As an educationist, what are some of the issues, affecting the Nigerian child?
Well, there are several issues. Firstly, basic education. There is no legacy that is better than giving the child a solid foundation in terms of education. And in Nigeria, unfortunately, this is a real issue affecting children, and it's just getting worse. Now we have issues surrounding security. I think every child deserves to feel safe wherever they are, but we have a lot of issues ranging from insecurity issues, poverty issues that they do not really have to go through, and they're going through it, and several issues around abuse as well. It's becoming more and more common. So these are all the issues that are surrounding the Nigerian child.
Quite interesting.
All right. Well, Mariam, you may also, give us your own perspectives. With the rising challenges that we are having that has to do with children, do you think that we are matching these challenges with the commensurable responses that is needed to actually nip some of these issues?
Thank you very much once again for having us here. I would say a lot is being done, and a lot more can be done. On the side of government, we are here simply because we're supporting the non-state part of the issues surrounding children. On the side of government, you would say a lot is being done and a lot more can be done with regards to education of children and the welfare of children. Some of the issues, like Amina rightly said, surrounds basic education, the funding of basic education, the proper welfare of teachers with regard to the quality of education that these children receive. Now, the least that we can do for these children in the situation that we find ourselves as a nation is to give them the quality education that they deserve in order for this country to grow appropriately and for us to be able to actually achieve our full potential as a nation. So I do believe, yes, I will commend the efforts being done, but I think a lot more can be done for the Nigerian child.
Well, quite a number of factors that militate against all the efforts that are being made to ensure that the Nigerian child is educated. You've highlighted issue of insecurity, but again, there's also the problem of poverty. yes, education, should be free and accessible to all, but it's not. And even where it's said to be free, you kind of want to question the quality of the kind of education, that we get. So how important it is for us to also look beyond just the children, but again, their parents as well, in terms of, economic empowerment and the rest.
I think, like Mariam just rightly said, the government is doing a whole lot. But then more needs to be done, because there's the Empower, there's the National Social Investment Program aimed at, reaching out to the poorest of the poor. So if you empower, and that program is meant to empower the poorest of the poor, if we do it right and these parents are enriched, at least empowered, you're able to send your child to school. So if your child is asked to pay a stipend in school, because like you rightly said, education, quote and unquote, is supposed to be free. But what we learn is the infrastructures are free. Government has built the schools for the children. So if you come into a school, you're not expected to have the government also buying your uniform for you. Your parents have to buy that. And there are so many parents that cannot do that because the money is not there. So there's a need for us to empower them, so that at least when the parents are empowered, you don't have a child having to hawk, before coming to school. We would be able to address the issue of child labor, street begging, and so many things, because one of the challenges, it's that issue of poverty. And if, again, government also introduced the alternate school system. Alternate school system is expected to also address issue of children not being enrolled in school. How do we enroll them to see to it that they are engaged in issues that affect them, whereby literacy and numeracy comes into play, and then if you are not ready to go to school, what do you really want to do? You can be empowered to engage in whatever you want to do, and then maybe you get yourself involved in adult education. We also have what the government introduced from the Office of the Vice President, which is called At-Risk Children Initiative. That initiative is also meant to address issues that affect children who are not given the opportunity to go to school. And I guess if parents are empowered, if government actually uses this platform, those laudable initiatives that they have been introducing to address issue of poverty in the country, it will go a long way in seeing to it that children are in school. Because even the what do you call it, this feeding program that they're doing is a laudable initiative. But then, if you give a child food in the morning, or when he comes to school and he eats 1 square meal, what happens when he goes back home? Or even if you say, okay, the Almajiri should come to school and he's ensured of being given 1 square meal, so what happens? He still goes back to beg.
Right. Okay, now let me direct this at Amina. The theme for this year's World Children's Day is strengthening supportive systems for the protection of the Nigerian child, a wake-up call. In your assessment, would you say Nigeria has, that strong, supportive system for the Nigerian child?
Well, like Mariam rightly said, a lot has been done. She mentioned the At-Risk Children's Program, which is quite popular. There's the Open Schooling Initiative introduced by UBEC. There's a girls' cluster learning system. We're also aware of the Agile project, all for girls. But if you ask me what the wake-up call should be, I would say it's coordination. Because we have a whole lot of people doing a lot for the Nigerian child. My organization amongst them, Mariam's, Zainab's as well. But where is the synergy? Where is it? Government is doing a whole lot. But when you hear the numbers, are they really decreasing? You just hear them increasing.
Right.
And then where is the impact? You say the child shouldn't beg, but then what systems have you put in place to not let that child beg? These are all things that we should really look into. It's something else to pass a policy, and it's something to have a supportive system for that policy to be well implemented. So you asked me what I mean by coordination. I would say Government should own the coordinating process. Millions of dollars are coming into Nigeria every year, especially to address the menace of out-of-school children. FCDO is doing a lot. The EU is also doing a lot. We know of the US Embassy initiatives as well. All these major funding agencies are doing a lot, but a lot of efforts are counterproductive. I know myself would go to a community, we are helping some group of children, another NGO is helping the same group of children, another NGO. So if this child comes today, they're absent tomorrow, and then they'll tell you they've gone to another NGO school. That's what they even call them now. So I think with technology, we should have gone way past that by now, because technology can easily take care of it. We just recently had a major shift in our digital systems. The Minister of Communication said everybody's line has to be registered with their NIN number, which is going to make a whole lot of difference. So how can you be a Nigerian citizen and not be captured on a platform? If that platform was there, that synergy was there, that strong coordination was there, I think many key players that want to provide that support would easily know how to key into it, with the mind that what they're doing is actually going to make a good impact.
It's quite interesting.
All right, Mariam, you know, it's one thing to provide all of these things, you know, to ensure that children go to school, but also it's important for them to actually stay in school and guarantee their safety in the process. We've heard about school abductions. Recently, schools have become target for terrorists, you know, and then we've seen school children abducted in their hundreds. There's also the Safe School initiative, you know, but again, so far, we've not seen how that initiative have actually guaranteed safety of school children. So what are we not getting right, in your opinion, as regards safety of school children?
Well, I think for me, and this is a very sensitive topic as it may be, the entire security system as a whole, not just talking about the schools in itself, there's a problem there, there's a gap there, not to talk about schools that are being affected. What exactly is the government doing with regards to ensuring the safety of these schools, ensuring the safety of these children? Now, I believe where government doesn't come in, we as a community can come in. The responsibility of education, and rightly the responsibility of security, may be solely on the shoulders of the government, but I think we as a community as well can do a little bit more. How do we secure these schools? How do we ensure that once our children get into these schools, that they come back home safely? A lot of state governments have vigilante groups where they use right now simply because of the lapses in the security system. But whether we like it or not, the security situation that we found ourselves has actually made things a lot worse for these students and a lot worse for these parents. We're already at a very, very, very trying times. We have children, and when you look at the population of our public schools as well, especially in the north, we currently did a survey, a baseline study when we were doing our scholarship system to kind of find out the exact figures with regards to public schools. And what we found in the north in comparison to the south was quite alarming. And you can understand how securing those schools will be a bit harder. In the south, you're averaging within 500 students, 600 students in a public school. In the north, you're averaging around 1,500, 2,000, 3,000 in a public school. So even securing that amount of children in a school in itself is a challenge. So I believe that at the local government level, a lot more can be done at the state level, because I think when we're talking about security and at whole, we put the entire bulk of the responsibility on the federal government, you know, but I think at the community level, a lot more can be done. At the local government level and at the state level, a lot more can be done. But in general, the security system is a bit alarming, and it's really something that needs to be tackled properly.
All right, well, also, I think that there's also another threat which has to do with about, the value system. This time around, more has to do with the parents, how much they value education. Sometimes you find parents who actually do not really care, do not really, prioritize the need for children to go to school and to get educated and all of that. Partly maybe because of poverty, also issues of child labor, issues of child trafficking, and all of that. How can we mitigate that? How can we control some of these trends so that children are able to concentrate and then change the mindset, or I would say the orientation of some parents as regards child education?
Thank you, even given the answer to it, because it boils down to changing the mindset. Already, so many parents believe that education is a waste of time, and then what's the need? But over time, we realize that when you talk about someone being educated, it doesn't really have to be going to the four walls of a classroom. There are different ways to educate people. And then these parents end up saying, like, before now you asked about the issue of insecurity. So why would I send my child to school when my children are being abducted? You see, initially we're trying to even change their mindset to say, okay, let's encourage our children to go to school. But the insecurity is even making the issue worse. So having to sit with them and also make them realize that, yes, the government is actually committed, because there has to be that commitment from government that, yes, if I send my child to school, my child is safe. My child will come back home to me. And then at the end of the day, when children even eventually go to school, a child finishes university and there's no work for that child. He still comes back to the same parents to see to it that, okay, help me out. Yeah, government have some laudable initiative, like I said earlier. So is there that thing about, at the end of the day, our children will have something to fall back to? Because that is what would encourage every parent. And then if you say education is free, ensure that it is actually free. Provide the necessary infrastructures. Because you go to some government schools and it's so alarming. I went to a school some few days ago, and in a classroom you have 250 children. And some of them get tired and they just come out, sitting down outside. Some you see them sitting on the windows. And when the teacher is teaching, their mind is not there. So sometimes, in fact, I met a case where a boy would just pick his bicycle and just leaves the school premises because he's tired. And then the principal was like, she's tired of the way he behaves. But you don't blame such children, because he feels that, okay, I am better off doing the mechanic work I'm doing. At least I'm earning something. Mm-hmm. It's better than going to school. So government also have to put the necessary infrastructures.
Again, that also raises the question about, the changing dynamics of our world today. In times past, formal education, yes, is key, and then you find that there are certain professions, there are certain engagements that children are always pushed into doing, professional courses, medicine, law, and the rest of them. But we are now realizing that the world is changing, and the jobs that we used to know, or the professions that we used to know, can no longer accommodate everybody. Mm-hmm. And we have children with talents, with different gifts for different things. So in terms of adapting to the new realities, our educational system, do you think that it is taking into consideration some of the dynamics that are now unfolding?
Yes, it is, because when you look at the technical schools, to be fair to them, they are doing that, and they have vocational trainings being introduced in school curriculum. And I think, but how many schools actually go into that? But if they can do that, it will help a lot, because these children feel, okay, if I'm good at maybe hairdressing, the alternate school system, I'm still taking us back to that, talks about, okay, helping children to go back to school. If you want to go back to school and you want to engage in not just literacy, but you want to be empowered and learn skills, entrepreneurial skills, you're going to be empowered to do that. So if UBEC and Secondary Education Board will come up with this thing about, okay, it's not just about education or what is a boy is blah, blah, blah. It goes beyond that, like you rightly said. So these children need to be engaged. So when you leave secondary school, even if you decide, I don't want to go to the university, you know I have a skill. I can empower myself. I cannot be a nuisance to the society. And there are so many Nigerian children out there who are, the talent they have in them, you're just wondering, and most of them are not even in school. Because I've come across so many of them and you're wondering, why are we allowing this talent just go to waste? So if we can empower these children, even from schools, if you're talking about Empower shouldn't be about a graduate that just finished university. Why don't you start from there? Let's watch out for our talents from primary and secondary schools.
Really very interesting. Now let me direct this at Amina. Let's talk about equality now. There's this narrative about the ratio of boys in school, to the ratio of girls in school is not commensurate, particularly in the north. So over the years, would you say that narrative has changed, or we're on that path of changing that narrative?
Yeah, in fact, there's a lot of change in terms of girls' enrollments, in terms of awareness, because even if you see the reports from UNICEF 2020 report on girls' enrollment, the disparity, there's a lot of improvement in terms of girls' enrollment, and parents more willing to let their girls attend schools. And I think the government has also done a lot in passing policies surrounding child marriage. Some states, because like basic education is a state thing, some states have also done well to, like Ekiti State, I know, that girls must learn. So even if something had to affect their education, like teenage pregnancy, they have to go back to school. All of those policies are in place and they're cemented. However, I think the difference that this would come and make, I would go back to my earlier point to buttress it, is coordination, once again. So if you talk about equality, the first thing that comes to mind is justice. And for every just system, you must have a way to back up whatever you're doing with data. You must have, people have to agree that what you're doing is just. So she talked about government introducing initiatives, but if you introduce initiatives and you leave it at the community level, and what happens is only those that are being favored that end up benefiting from that program. Where is the equality? There is no equality. So what are the things, what are the systems you need to put in place to make sure that this girl or that child is actually in school, not the same person that is benefiting from 3 programs at a time or 4 programs at a time, maybe because there are some benefits that are attached to it. So for equality, I would once again come back to my point. Technology is big. In some countries, you just walk through the door and your picture appears because they have your passport number, everything is there. So where is Nigeria with its own citizens having to be on its own platform captured? So if everybody was enrolled and there is a direct correlation with them being in school, registered online, there is a digital attendance, and then there is a NIN number that is being used to track everything. So even if you're implementing policies, you have data to back up whatever policies you want to implement, and those sanctions you're giving would be valid.
Okay. All right, Mariam. Amina raised an issue here. She mentioned something about early marriage, which is also a very important, aspect of this conversation. When children are married off early, they don't get the opportunity to sometimes learn and to maximize their full potentials. So now, if you talk about certain laws that we have made in the country, sometimes those laws are made and then they are restricted to certain places, maybe the federal capital and then maybe a few other states. How important it is for us to have a holistic approach towards some of these issues, so that we can achieve that, equality, like Amina is saying, when it comes to changing certain narratives.
So I think, like she rightly said, as Zainab rightly said earlier, a lot of it has to do with the change of mindset. Remember, when it comes to early marriage, there are two things involved, and they're intertwined. And as a society, we've found it difficult to kind of separate these two things, which is religion and culture. So these two things have intertwined that at the very grassroots, even for us sometimes that are well educated and would believe to be educated and exposed enough, you have a clash sometimes of where to draw the line between religion sometimes and culture. With regards to child marriage, and like Amina rightly said, yes, there has been a lot of improvement with regards to enrollment, but where the problem now comes is completion. And that is where sometimes child marriage comes into play, because some of these girls would rather get married than actually complete secondary school education. We do have a lot of completion when it comes to primary school education. That is not a problem in as much as secondary school education. So that is where that comes into play. Now, what is child marriage? To who and to what? A lot of people would see it differently. For us, because there's a religious and a cultural donation to what child marriage is, we look at it in a very I don't know what the exact word to use for that, but in a very negative kind of way. At what age do we determine child marriage? According to Nigeria, I think the legal age of getting married is 18, if I'm correct. I believe 18 is 18. Then from what age from 18 becomes now child marriage? A lot of states in the north, I believe, you'll find child marriage at the barest level where educational level is very low, which comes back to at least having the foundation of having that basic education. Now, with that basic education, what that does is it enlightens you. It enlightens, especially if the parents are educated. It enlightens the parents. It makes the parents understand, okay, in as much as, yes, this child needs to get married because there's that importance of being married. In as much as, yes, she can get married, she can also intertwine the two worlds of being a married woman and actually do getting an education. So until we can advocate for it at the barest minimum, at the lowest level, you're talking about the traditional rulers, you're talking about the local government, you're talking about the states, where you're advocating for that and making it very, very paramount that, yes, we do not have a problem with these children getting married, but can they at least get to the age of 18 before they do so? And even at that, can you at least get them to finish primary school and secondary school, and whatever it is that they want to do after that is now left to them. We live in a technological world, like Amina rightly said, and I believe that with the basic literacy of having the ability to read and write, the sky's the limit to what any child can achieve in Nigeria today. You find on social media every day, you see children, girls or boys, creating different things from children who have never attended a day in school, but probably have the basic literacy of being able to read and write, being able to learn for yourself. So I think coming back to the child marriage thing, the advocacy and the coordination at the federal, state, local government level and non-state actors like ourselves to ensure that the message is driven and the importance of that message actually gets to the right people, most especially the mothers and the fathers at the very grassroots across the states.
All right, well, thank you so much. We would have to end the discussion here because of our time. We thank you for joining us on Daybreak and sharing what you are doing as regards, children, especially as today is Children's Day. Thank you so much for coming.